Hello. So I've heard people give Andre Ward credit for Sergey Kovalev's defeat last weekend against Eleider Alvarez. So Kovalev has been stopped in the second fight, but lost a close decision in the first fight, and these were his first losses as a pro. He had since then come back and beaten, who did he beat? He beat Shabransky and won a vacant WBO light heavyweight title, getting thrown in against a guy that isn't really on Kovalev's level. Kinda straight up and down fighter, you know. Shabransky had been exposed before that by Sullivan Barrera. So yeah, Kovalev stopped Shabransky pretty quickly. I believe he got even stunned with a jab in that fight. Then he fights this guy Igor Mikhailkin, not a lot of pop, a little undersized at light heavyweight. Also very cordial and friendly pre-fight interactions between the two fighters, you know, there wasn't much of a beef there. Both these fighters are, I believe, Russian fighters. I could be wrong though. But they had experience with each other. They knew each other from the amateurs, I believe. And even in that fight, Mikhailkin did give Kovalev his fair share of trouble, you know what I mean? He did present some problems. In the end, was kind of overwhelmed by Kovalev's power, size, you know. Just a cumulative damage that Mikhailkin had taken over the duration of the fight. It wasn't easy for Kovalev, you know, especially with the style Mikhailkin presented. Not that he was evading the fight, doing his best, trying to counter punch. He was a little undersized. Not bad at all technically. A little awkward maybe, you know, maybe not the most beautiful style. So Kovalev came through that fight, right? Was able to score a technical knockout over Mikhailkin. And then he goes in against Eleider Alvarez, and I don't know, Alvarez, man, he had been kinda waiting for his shot for a while now. He's not the youngest guy himself, you know, mid-30s, like Kovalev, but it was his first shot at a title. I've heard he had taken step-aside money a couple of times, like for Adonis Stevenson. He saw some weakness going after Kovalev. Now that I hear people giving Andre Ward credit for Kovalev losing, it's kind of crazy to me, you know what I mean? I mean, give Andre Ward credit for beating him in the first place. I also don't like how everybody's like jumping off the bandwagon of Sergey Kovalev. I don't know, I was a fan of Sergey Kovalev. I like his style, I like his personality. Kinda unfiltered, it felt like. Like he was kinda able to overcome his language barrier, like just with his personality, with being kinda brutish. But I like that shit, you know what I mean? But a lot of people have been jumping off the bandwagon, questioning his character. In the Andre Ward fights, he didn't present maybe like the most gracious mindset, especially going into the second fight, coming off his first defeat. I understand that he felt like he won the fight. I also thought he won the fight by 1 point, but it seemed like he was making a lot of excuses, also with the trainer change, John David Jackson. John David Jackson was there for both fights, but it seemed like he was taking most of the criticism, you know, especially after, obviously, Kovalev, after the knockout loss in the second fight, he parted ways with John David Jackson. I guess he employed like some Russian amateur trainer or something. It's same old Kovalev to me, you know what I mean? I didn't necessarily see like this rapid regression in style. Maybe he was questioning himself in his mindset. There was maybe side effects of the Andre Ward losses, or just the losses in general. I don't know, it's weird to me. I don't know if he's shook, Kovalev, you know? Actually, I think it's the matchup that presents him trouble, you know? A well-rounded fighter that has decent hand speed and defensively sound, a guy that works the body, that can get physical with you, you know? That's a good counter-puncher. I mean, how often are you gonna fight these type of fighters, you know? Like Shabransky isn't the type of fighter. Like dudes that Kovalev had very much success against weren't that type of fighter. If you look at it, who's the most similar to Andre Ward of the fighters he has faced? I think it's Alvarez. Next, it's maybe Isaac Chilemba. A fight before the Ward fight in Russia, Kovalev had a lot of trouble with Isaac Chilemba, you know, with the style. It wasn't his usual performance. He blamed it on having too much outside of the ring distractions in Russia. His homecoming, especially after the last time he had fought in Russia, when he beat his opponent and his opponent fell into a coma and sadly died. He also said maybe his conditioning wasn't up to par in the Chilemba fight. He said he gassed in the second half of the fight. Somewhat competitive, not necessarily on the scorecards, but Chilemba did some good things in there, you know? He's a savvy veteran. And before that, an old Bernard Hopkins, like 48 years old or whatever, from a styles perspective, he was actually the first guy maybe that presented Andre Ward problems, you know what I mean? It was just like an old version of that guy, you know? Comparisons have been made between Andre Ward and Bernard Hopkins, and I can see that. Bernard Hopkins presented Sergey Kovalev with more trouble than he was given credit for after the fight. Sergey Kovalev actually was given a lot of credit for beating Bernard Hopkins the way he did, outboxing Bernard Hopkins to a degree, staying very composed and sticking to his game plan. He was the fresher fighter, so activity and work rate was definitely on his side for the majority of the fight, but especially in the second half of the fight, you can see Bernard Hopkins actually starting to try to take chances, you know? He didn't have much of a margin of error. That's what we've seen early in the fight and also late in the fight. When Bernard was overstepping, he would pay for it, you know what I mean? Look at Cedric Agnew. That guy gave Kovalev a little bit of trouble in 2014 with a very negative style. Kept his hands actually at home. Didn't give Kovalev much of a target with a high guard also. Took a while for Kovalev to get through to Cedric Agnew. Wasn't the easiest fight for Kovalev. When you think about like now him getting knocked down 3 times in one round, first of all he took a shot that he didn't see, dropped his hands after throwing a jab and got countered with the right hand over the top. Didn't see that shot, man, and I think actually took it pretty well, the first punch. But it seemed like after getting up, he didn't really seem to have it all together to hold and kind of stall out and clinch, stifle, trying to regain his faculties. He's not used to be in that position, you know, that was pretty much the first time that he got dropped like that. I mean, he got stunned against Andre Ward, and even then you could see, and even before that, that the fight was getting out of control, and maybe that is a conditioning issue. We've seen also Sergey Kovalev going into the second Andre Ward fight. After complaining about conditioning issues in the Chilemba fight, he went into the Ward fight and got again tired in the second half. That's what lost him the fight basically, you know. Then going into the second Andre Ward fight, it happened again. And actually he dialed his training back. Said he was running way too much. He was overdoing it for the first fight. If you have a conditioning issue and you do less the second time around, I don't know if that's necessarily the best remedy. But yeah, he got tired again and got stopped in the second fight, you know what I mean? Maybe it's just a slow regression of Kovalev since the Chilemba fight. But I don't know, I think it's more of a styles issue. He doesn't protect himself enough on defense. He's so worried about punching or being the aggressor or throwing punches in general, you know what I mean? Working behind his good jab, dropping his hands after jabs and stuff, that's just a bad habit. Maybe John David Jackson was better with keeping him sticking to the tactics or sticking to his technique. Also, I've seen him in that Eleider Alvarez fight kind of get crazy at his trainer once again, you know, when they were a little late as far as getting out of the ring with the 1 minute rest period, starting the round, and he gets all anxious and starts yelling, get out of the ring and stuff like that, man. I've seen him do that with John David Jackson. Like, he gets very anxious, so maybe there is a mental instability in Sergey Kovalev when things don't necessarily go all his way, you know. You have to kind of be able to get to him and keep him calm, I guess. Maybe that's not the easiest thing, you know. Maybe nobody has really gotten to that point as far as like having a calming influence on him. Maybe that's what flares up when he, like, actually his remedy to getting outboxed like for the first couple of rounds in the Alvarez fight, like, was just amping it up, you know what I mean? Going harder. I don't know if that's smart, man. He'll like shoe shine and try to find his rhythm off that, but he look for exchanges and he has a lot of belief in his power. Maybe that personality as a crusher, you know, that whole persona kind of bit him in the ass in the end against certain fighters, you know. I don't think it's only him just sucking or his soul being snatched by Andre Ward and all that. I think it's first of all a fighter getting older, also him fighting better competition and the style that he maybe has most problems with. People are starting to kind of figure him out, and if you want to give Andre Ward credit, give him credit, I don't know. But there were always signs for that, you know what I mean? Sergey Kovalev doesn't have a left hook, he doesn't work really to the body, you know, these were always issues. Kind of pulls out with his head high in a straight line. He just never has had to fight a guy that also can present as well technical and physical problems for him, you know what I mean? Like Blake Caparello dropped him with a body shot, but that didn't seem to like take the steam out of him. I mean, in the underworld fights he also got hurt to the body. Yeah, I don't know, man. He's somewhat flawed, Sergey Kovalev, but the things he does well, they're enough to beat most of the fighters that he will face, you know? I don't see many dudes like being able to just box with him, you know, compete with his jab, have the resilience to make it physical against him, you know what I mean? Most of the time they're getting torn up basically before getting into range to do their damage, or they fight basically at his pace. I don't know. Like, people are searching for answers, you know what I mean? And giving Andre Ward credit, I mean, you can't give him credit, man. I don't even want to say that because these were competitive fights against Andre Ward. The second fight not so much, but Sergey Kovalev definitely can compete with Andre Ward. That's where the doubt for him creeps in probably, because he can see evidence that he can compete with him, but for some reason he can't beat him. But I think it's a style thing, you know what I mean? And if you're not able to change it up somehow, you know, adjust to that, you're gonna always have problems against that type of style. Also, he's 35 years old now, you know what I mean? How much is there to expect from now on, you know? Maybe it's a good thing for him. Maybe it's not only Andre Ward or politics or whatever. Maybe he needed to get his ass sat down, you know, and try to learn from it, you know what I mean? And hopefully his trainer or whoever's around him will address that, you know? Not just take the check and go along with the program that Sergey Kovalev lays out, you know what I mean? Make actually adjustments and try to better the fighter you're associated with, you know? Kovalev obviously likes yes men around him. He doesn't like back talk, sucker. But maybe that's what's needed, you know? Anyway, like I said, he's 35. He's definitely nearing the end, you know, of his prime. Nearing the end, I mean, it is the end of his prime right now. But I wouldn't count him out against fighters that don't fight like a Andre Ward type of style, you know, or Alvarez type of style. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he would have been able to beat, for example, Dimitri Bivol. Maybe even Salvan Barrera would have been able to give him a little bit of trouble, you know. I wouldn't be surprised if he would be able to beat Artur Beterbiev. Alright, thanks for listening.